Oh hey, welcome to Flynndogg Woodwork. Well, I guess today I'm going to make a video.
Yep, and while he's doing that, I'm gonna make some memes.
You're still here?
Of course I am. These memes ain't gonna make themselves.
Just as an FYI, it's pronounced meme, not mimi.
I don't care what they're called. Plus, who's gonna throw you them tools?
You do have a point there. Well, I just got 5 new and approved tools from Goingmake as well as 1 brand new one. Let's dig into these tools and see how well they work. So one of the greatest things about having this YouTube channel is it gives me an opportunity to check out some other tool brands that I might not normally look at. And we've looked at a lot of lesser known brands on this channel, but there's some that just stand out above the rest. And last year, I discovered a brand that completely stood out above the rest. And of course, that brand is Goingmake. And I've done 2 videos where I've done an in-depth look at many of their tools. So if you're interested in some background on Goingmake, check out either one of those videos. So what has made Goingmake such an enticing brand for me? Well, there's really 3 reasons. The first reason is they're reasonably priced. The second reason is all the tools that I've taken a look at are high quality. And lastly, and probably most importantly, each one of these tools has a feature that many of the competitors just don't have. So before we dig into today's new tools, let's rehash some of these other tools that have really impressed me. First and foremost are their T-squares. And as you can see here, I've built a French cleat rack for all of these squares. I've got the 12-inch, the 16-inch, the 20, the 24, as well as the 32-inch square. And these are very comparable to your Woodpecker's TS squares. And in fact, they even have a little bit more precision than the Woodpeckers. You can see the Woodpeckers has scribe holes at every 16th of an inch, while the Goingmake has scribe holes at every 32nd of an inch. The next tool that I've been really impressed with is this Goingmake Concealed Hinge Jig. Now the nice thing about this tool, as opposed to many of its competitors like the kreg jig, is that this tool is made entirely out of metal. And it's even got some bells and whistles with some offsets on the very bottom, as well as a ruler, dust collection, and even a drill guide that allows you to pre-drill for those small screws on the hinges. The next tool that I've been really impressed with is also a jig. And this jig is a drilling jig for shelf pins. Once again, Goingmake sets itself apart by having an all-metal construction. It also has offsets to make sure that you place your pins exactly where you want. There's also little holes that help you align this jig to exactly where you want it. The next item I've been really impressed with is their chisel and plane blade honing guide. Once again, we're dealing with an all-metal construction here, and the thing that impressed me the most about this fixture is the ability to switch out the wheels. Depending on the size of your chisel or your plane blade, you can either have the wheels on the interior or the exterior to make sure that it perfectly fits your blade. And this is just a taste of the high-quality tools that this company is producing. I'll leave links in the description below for the videos that dive into each one of these tools so you can go check it out if you'd like. But as I said earlier, we've got some new tools to check out. I've got 5 upgrades on some of their older tools as well as 1 brand new tool. And I couldn't be more excited about this first tool. If it's as high quality as all the other tools I've taken a look at, this might be a game changer. Bert, can you hand me that first tool?
Me. What?
Are you just standing in front of a meme and saying me?
Of course I am. That's how you do it.
Unbelievable. Can you just hand me that box?
This one here? Sure thing. Here you go.
So this is the brand new Goingmake Pocket Hole Jig. Let's dig into it and see what it's all about. So just like many of you, I only have experience with 1 pocket hole jig. Now that I think about it, I actually purchased one on Banggood, but it totally crapped out on me on the first time I used it.
Me. Yeah, that was bang bad.
Sure was. So hopefully we're gonna have a different experience with this Goingmake tool. Let's take it out of the box and see what it comes with. So inside the box, you're going to get the user manual, as well as 2 collars for your drill bits. You'll also get 2 hex keys and some pocket hole screws to get you started. You'll also get 2 Robinson bits, 1 long and 1 short, as well as 2 drill bits. You'll also get a few plugs, as well as the pocket hole jig itself. Now already I'm really impressed with this jig, as it's got a feature that my old kreg jig just doesn't have. Let's take a look at that. And that has to do with this little piece right here. It's the drill guide for the pocket hole jig itself. The drill guide can be completely detached from the jig itself. This allows you to take the drill guide to any piece of wood that you want. And this is really nice that it comes standard with this jig. As with the kreg jig, I actually had to purchase an entirely different tool to be able to use it in this fashion. So with the kreg jig, not only did I have to buy the jig itself, but I also had to buy this expensive accessory in order to be able to do pocket holes in any material that was thicker than the jig could handle. But with the Goingmake's detachable design, it allows you to take your jig to your material versus having to take your material to your jig. If we take a closer look at the tool, you'll notice there's a little lip on the very end of the tool. This is what rests up against the edge of your workpiece as you're drilling your holes. You'll also notice a little brass knob that allows you to adjust this lip depending on how thick your material is. By looking at the little white arrow on the very end, you can adjust this from 1/2 of an inch all the way up to 1 3/4 of an inch. Maybe you're like 99% of the rest of the world and don't work in inches.
That's right. The metric system.
Well, it's got you covered there as well. If we flip the tool around, you can see the increments are in millimeters versus inches. To use this jig in a normal fashion, all you need to do is to unscrew the 2 brass knobs on the side to remove the lip. Once the lip has been removed, you can slide the drill guide into the pocket hole jig and reattach the 2 brass knobs. And just like the lip has, the jig also has increments in imperial on one side and metric on the other. Now let's take a tour of the physical construction of the unit and see what's on this jig. If we look at the front right hand side of the jig, you'll notice that there's measurements going all the way from 1/2 of an inch all the way up to 1 3/4 of an inch. This is used to set the collar on your drill bit to set the appropriate depth of your hole. If we look in front of the clamp, there's actually a nice feature here that allows you to measure the thickness of the wood that you're drilling through. If I place this wood in here, you can see we're right at 3/4 of an inch. Next, let's take a closer look at the top of the drill guide. Just like with most pocket hole jigs, you'll notice that there's 3 drill guides on the very top of the jig. The very first drill guide is 1/2 of an inch from the very edge of the tool. The second drill guide is 3/4 of an inch from the very first drill guide. And finally, the third drill guide is exactly 1 inch from the middle drill guide. Let's see if we can attach a Festool dust collection hose to that dust collection chute. And as to be expected, that dust collection hose fits smoothly into place. Lastly, before we do some tests, let's take a closer look at the clamp itself. And just like with many clamps, this has a locking nut system, but it does have a very thick soft foam pad. Now, one interesting feature that this clamp does have that I haven't seen on any other pocket hole jig is the ability to adjust it for thicker stock. By unscrewing the 4 hex bolts on the very front, you can actually move this entire clamp back about 3/4 of an inch by screwing it into the 4 holes in back. Well, that about covers all the features of this new pocket hole jig. Now let's test it out by cutting some pocket holes in a piece of 3/4 inch stock. So first off, I'll confirm the thickness of my material by placing it in the front scale. Next, we'll take our drill bit and slide it into the slot on the side. And for this jig, we actually line up the tip of the drill bit, not the collar, to 3/4 of an inch, and then we can tighten down the collar. Now, I did reach out to the company and I let them know that I think that the collar of that drill bit should line up to the measurement versus the tip, as that's the way most pocket hole jigs work here in the US. But we'll do it like they say. Once that's done, we can also set the height of the drill guide to 3/4 of an inch as well. Now, one thing that I noticed when setting up the height for that drill gauge is there is a little bit of movement with that drill gauge. Now, normally this would concern me. However, once you place your stock into that clamp, that wiggle is completely negated. So now that we have our stock into place, let's drill out some pocket holes and make sure everything functions appropriately. So one thing that's kind of nice about this jig, instead of using face clamps, you can actually use MFT style clamps. It slides right into the slot on the bottom and you can tighten it down with just a couple of twists. And if we remove the material, you can see how nice and clean each one of those pocket holes are. And the dust collection works wonderfully. I don't think any material escaped this dust collection chute. So overall, I'm really quite impressed with this jig. I think it's got a lot of features that many other pocket hole jigs just don't have. I really like the fact that you can remove the drill guide and take it to your workpiece. I also like this little gauge on the very top of it that allows you to measure the thickness of your material. I also like the fact that you can actually remove the clamp and move it back a bit in case you're dealing with wider material. My only concerns with this jig is that little bit of wiggle that you get before you add your stock to the jig, as well as the way you measure for the collar on your drill bit. But as long as you follow the instructions and use the jig appropriately, this could be a great addition to anybody's shop. Well, that takes us through the latest innovation from Goingmake Tools. Our next 5 items are updates to great tools that we've already taken a look at. So let's start to take a look at our next item. So the first update that was made to a tool was made to a jig that I think is an absolute necessity if you do things like cutting boards with any type of frequency. And if you haven't guessed already, this is a thin rip jig. This allows you to create beautiful accents to all of your cutting boards. And in my opinion, Goingmake has one of the best thin rip jigs out there for the money. As you can see, it deals both with imperial and metric and even has the ability to do some micro adjustments. You'll also notice that the little bearing wheel on the very side only moves in one direction, which is great because that one direction bearing kind of acts like a featherboard and can even prevent kickback. So you may be asking, what did Goingmake do now to make this thin rip jig even better? Well, let's find out. Hey Bert!
Have some more chicken. Have some more pie. It doesn't matter if it's boiled or fried.
I prefer fried. What?
Can you please hand me the next tool?
Both of them? Okay, here you go. Me.
So these next 2 tools are the new and improved Goingmake Thin Rip Jigs. Let's check them out. So at first glance, it may be a little bit difficult to tell how the 2 new jigs on the right are different from the original jig on the left, other than the fact that one of them is red. But in actuality, there's 3 modifications that have been made to this jig. Let's take a look at all 3. The first difference we already kind of mentioned, and that's the fact that they're offering this tool in red as well as the original black. The next difference has to do with the precision of the tool, which can be really important when you're dealing with thin strips of wood. If we look at the original version on top and the newer version on the bottom, you'll notice on the imperial side the measurements only went to 1/16 of an inch, while the newer version goes to 1/32 of an inch. And that's going to be really helpful, especially when adding those accent strips to things like your cutting boards. The third and final new feature with these tools has everything to do with the rigidity of this tool. If we flip the tool around, you'll notice that it now has a different type of miter bar. These T-shaped miter bars are perfect for getting a really strong grip on some of your higher end table saws like a saw stop. And you can see here how they perfectly fit inside those miter slots. And by having that extra contact with the miter slot, there is no slop in this tool whatsoever. But this new miter bar system is not the only miter bar that comes with this tool. Let's take a look at the other 2. If we look at the original thin rip jig on the right, you'll notice that the new thin rip jig not only comes with the T-shaped miter bars, but also the original pressurized miter bar as well. It also comes with 2 T-bolts. So no matter what size your miter slot is for your table saw or your router table, this thin rip jig should be able to accommodate it. And now that this jig has its new colors, its new increments at a 32nd of an inch, as well as its T-shaped miter bar, along with some of its old favorites like its locking bearing, this thin rip jig has got to be one of the best on the market today. So once again, Goingmake continues to impress me with an old tool that's even better. Well, that's going to take us through our first 2 tools. Before we move on to our next one, I ask you to do me a huge favor, hit that subscribe button, leave a like, and leave a comment. It really does help out this small woodworking channel. Also, just like with all my videos, if any of the tools we're taking a look at today interest you, I'll leave links in the description below so you can go check out these tools for yourself. Lastly, check out my new website, www.flynndogwoodwork.com. There you can find shop updates, tool recommendations, and other ways you can support this small growing channel. Not to mention I've got a lot of fun woodworking accessories like all the shirts that I wear in my videos available on this website. So check out the new website, www.flynndogwoodwork.com. Now let's get back to the video. So our next updated design is to a tool that seems to be a really popular design for a lot of companies in the tool industry. And this tool is the 3D multifunctional ruler. In fact, if you go to Amazon, you'll find this space absolutely littered with all different shapes and sizes of this tool. But here in the US, one of the most popular brands that's making this tool is DFM Toolworks. But Goingmake has gone above and beyond this DFM version and added a couple of features. And they've just come out with 2 new versions of this tool. So let's check it out and see how it compares to the old version. B-Man, that's your cue.
Me.
You can has cheeseburger. Kitty, you can has cheeseburger.
That's one lucky pussy.
Can you please be normal and just call it a cat?
What'd I say?
Never mind, just hand me those 2 boxes.
These 2? Here you go.
So these are the new and improved Goingmake multifunctional angle rulers. Let's check them out. So if we take a look at what came inside these boxes, you can see that each box contains the ruler itself along with the hex key and a small pin. At first glance, these 3D rulers look very similar to the original Goingmake tool, but there are a few differences. Let's take a closer look. The first and most noticeable difference is the size. As you can see, the original one is 3 inches tall, while these newer ones are 4 inches tall. This extra length on the new one will allow you to easily cradle larger pieces of wood like a 4x4. This is something that the old version just couldn't handle. They've also increased the length of the leg that allows you to use that pin to draw predetermined angles. This new version has a 3-inch leg, while the old version only goes to 2.5 inches. And just like with the old version, you can use the pin to create angles at 67.5, 60, 45, 30, as well as 22.5. But probably the most important thing about having the extra length on this new tool is the ability to have scribe holes at 4 inches versus the original 3 inches. And just like before, these scribe holes run down the entire length of the square at 4 inches at every 1/16 of an inch. And these holes are now marked at every 1/8 of an inch versus the original version, which only had them marked at every 1/4 of an inch. And lastly, on the diagonal of the tool, they've marked out every 5-degree angle versus the original, which only had the 10-degree, 50-degree, and the 70-degree marking. And obviously, as you've just seen, these tools now come in red versus only black. So you can trick all your friends to make them think that you spent a heck of a lot of money on this tool. Well, although this tool only has some simple upgrades, we all know how important that extra inch can be. And with the quality and the accuracy of this new square being just as good as the old square, this is a no-brainer in my book. Well, that takes us through all but one of our items today, and our last tool has an update that I'm really happy about. And that's because, as you could probably tell, one of my most used workspaces in my shop is my Festool MFT. And of course, the MFT is all about the bench dog holes, and that's what this next tool is all about. So let's see if we can get Bert's attention and check out our last tool. Bert!
If you had 15 minutes with me, what would you do?
Well, if you're offering, I'd have you help clean out my septic tank. What?
Sometimes I wonder how you're still single. Can you hand me that next box?
I ain't gonna pass up free labor. This one, here you go.
So this is the new and improved Goingmake bench dog clamp. Let's take a look. So one of these sets is the old one and one's the new one, and you probably can't tell the difference. And that's because this is one of the most minor changes to any of the tools we're taking a look at today. But it is an important change. You see, if you remember from my previous video, Goingmake only made bench dog clamps for 3/4 inch holes, but now they make them for 20mm holes. This means if you work with something like a Festool MFT, you'll no longer have that jiggle with your clamps, but have a rock solid fit. And I'm really excited I can now use these clamps with my MFT table. Let me show you some of the reasons why I like these clamps so much. First off, if we look at the arm of the clamp, you'll notice that there's 2 holes that you can stick your jaw into. You can either have an extended reach or a shortened reach. The next thing that I like about this clamp is that there's 3 ways you can adjust the jaw on the clamp. The first way is the most obvious. You can turn the knob on the very top to tighten the clamp. The second way is you can loosen the brass knob on the side and quickly move it up and down. The third way is you can tighten that brass knob just a little bit and turn it into place to get whatever height you want. And it's all of these unique features that make this an excellent bench dog clamp. So now if you're dealing with 20mm bench dog holes, you can now purchase this clamp. Once again, I'm impressed with all these tools that we've taken a look at today. I really think Goingmake is a tool brand worth taking a look at. I really appreciate you joining me on today's video, and if you haven't already, make sure you hit that subscribe button, leave a like, and leave a comment. It really does help out this small woodworking channel. Also, make sure you check out my new website, www.flynndoggwoodwork.com. Until next time, take care as always.